Okay, so the last bab 9, talks about how Malaysia makes friends with other countries. That's the simple way of saying it. So firstly, it talks about the background of dasar luar. Dasar luar means outside relations. How do we become friends with other countries? How do we join these organizations in the first place? So it all starts with before Malacca. So before Malacca, we have Pan Pan, Langkasuka, and Chitu, which are all uh, old kesultanan before Malacca existed. So they became friends with China, and in 424 Masihi, Pan Pan sent their people to China, and then Langkasuka did the same thing, and then Chitu did the same thing, and this shows that even before Kesultanan Melayu Melaka, the old what's it called again? The old tribes, the old kingdoms, as we call it, were already becoming friends with other countries before this. And then during Malacca, Malacca made friends in two ways: hubungan diplomatic and hubungan perdagangan. So hubungan diplomatic means the hubungan diplomatic means making, it's more like a friendship type of thing. Like for example, I send people to your country to know you better, or I let you marry my daughter, or something like that. Hubungan perdagangan is more like trading, where you agree to trade with other countries in a friendly way. So diplomatic is more like friend, while diplomatic is more like partner. So hubungan diplomatic is good because it gives you more allies, while hubungan perdagangan is more towards helping you get more income. Because there's more people trading with you. So these are the examples of hubungan diplomatic and perdagangan. You see that China is very close with Malacca. Other than that, there is Ryukyu for diplomatic. Siam, I didn't expect Siam. I thought they hated Siam. Makassar, Pasar, and Turkey. For perdagangan, there's Hadramaut, Pegu, Luzon, Gujarat, Coromandel, Bengal, Mesir, Parsi, and Turkey. So Turkey and China were pretty close with Malacca back then. So why is this so important? Why do we want to have these outside relations with other countries? Can we just like do everything on our own? Firstly, menjamin kemakmuran Malacca melalui hubungan perdagangan dengan negara lain. When we have more relations with other countries, these countries would see that Malacca is very good. So it makes Malacca more successful. And then next, mengekalkan penguasaan terhadap aktiviti perdagangan di Selat Melaka. So this one means with these relations, Selat Melaka would be used to its fullest potential. What I mean is because not only is there Melaka and Selat Melaka, there's also like Pulau Jawa and other places along the Malacca Strait, Selat Melaka. And since Malacca is already there, might as well take advantage of its good location to get more trades. Memperoleh perakuan tentang kedaulatan Melaka. Again, as I said earlier, it's proof that Malacca is a very popular nation back then. This one is more towards ensuring that Malacca is a prosperous country. This one is more towards making Malacca more recognized. Membantu Malacca muncul sebagai pusat penyebaran Islam. After Islam was spread to Malacca, because everyone comes to Malacca, right? So they will obviously know more about Islam. So this is why Malacca is a very good place to spread Islam. Lastly, menjamin kestabilan dan keselamatan kerajaan. So because Malacca is making more friends, that means there will be less enemies. So Malacca will be safer. During British, everything was done by British. Especially for NNS, Sarawak and Sabah. But after kemerdekaan, we have two types of stances. We call it in English we call it stances, like our as we call it opinion. For here we call it dasar luar. I mean in BM for country terms we call it dasar luar. So dasar luar means what does Malaysia think about, like what is their ideology, what is their stance on things. So at first their stance was pro-Barat and anti-communist. This was during Tunku Abdul Rahman's time. The reason why is because Tunku Tanah Melayu was under British. British is a Western country, Barat. So we have to support British law, of course, because British used to be our bosses. So we can't just immediately disobey them. However, during Tun Abdul Razak's rule and continued after Mahathir's rule, we changed to a more after Tun Hussein On and Mahathir's rule, we changed to a more we're okay with China type of mindset. We call it dasar tidak memihak or dasar berkecuali. We call it dasar berkecuali, which means we are neutral. So at first we are pro-Western and anti-communist, but now we are neutral. And the reason why is because of China. Number one, Malaysia has a lot of Chinese people. And number two, China is getting even stronger. So if we were to continue partnering with US, which China isn't very friendly with, that might cause problems. So instead, we want to be more neutral because we don't want anything bad to happen. The only country that we truly hate is Israel. Or is it even a country? Anyways, that is the two stances, the two dasar luar that we have. At first, it was we love British and we hate communism. And then the second one was, oh, we don't care about anyone, you do you, but if anything bad happens to the humans, we're going to hate it or something like that. Well, we are neutral, guys, yay. So that's their two stances. So why do we have these stances in the first place? What is the matlamat? What is the objective, the point of having these stances? Again, can't we just like not care about it and like do our own stuff? Firstly, like can we just like do anything we want, like just make friends with whoever we want? It says here, dasar ini mempengaruhi tindakan negara dalam menghadapi susunan perkembangan politik wilayah serantau dan antarabangsa. Whatever we have, whatever stance we have, it decides what we will be doing. Like, if we are pro Barat and the Vietnam War happens, we have to support the US, something like that. Or if we are pro Barat and China and US are fighting each other, then we have to support the US or British because we are pro Barat. But however, if we have that stance, it will cause them, the China, to hate us instead, and that will not be very good because China is getting very strong. Next, kejayaan dasar luar Malaysia dapat diukur dengan wujudnya hubungan berbaik-baik serta kerjasama yang erat dalam bidang ekonomi, politik, pertahanan serta kebudayaan pada peringkat antarabangsa. So what this means is Malaysia is really good at making friends. Sejak tahun 1956, persediaan asas untuk menubuhkan Kementerian Luar Negeri telah bermula dan dikenali sebagai Kementerian Hal Ehwal Luar. So they've already been planning these outside relations from the start because Malaysia has to make friends after it becomes a country, right? And then it used to be known as Kementerian Hal Ehwal Luar, outside matters, and then it changed to Kementerian Luar Negeri, outside country, outside state. And this is just where the building changed to. But yeah, here's the peranan, the matlamat. Why do we need to make dasar luar? Firstly, we want to protect our country from any threat. We want to maintain our independence. We want to maintain our sovereignty. Sovereignty is kedaulatan. We want to, because again, if we just don't care about anyone, people won't care about us. People won't think we are a real country. So we need to make friends with the other countries so that they know that we are a country. I hope it's understandable. Next is melindungi kepentingan nasional. So this one is similar. Like we want to protect our utmost priorities. Our priorities are to be a very good country. So with this dasar luar, we are able to have relations with other countries without risking our own country's freedom. Like like melindungi kepentingan nasional is, we are able to benefit from making friends. That's the way to say it. Mempertahankan dan memajukan kepentingan Malaysia. Protect and develop our importance. Like it's similar lah. Like with these relations, we are able to develop as a country. Memupuk hubungan baik dengan negara luar. So this one is to make sure that there is no bad blood between us and other countries. menghadapi perkembangan serta cabaran politik, ekonomi dan sosial. So we are able to face any challenges that might come out, like a financial crisis, COVID, so on. So again, I'm going to repeat them. Firstly, we want to protect our independence. We don't want to be taken over again. Because if we don't have any relations, people will not see us as a real country. It's weird, but yeah. If we just don't care about anyone, they won't care about us either. We need to make friends. Next, we need to protect our own integrity. Like, we're not our own integrity. We want to make friends so that we are able to benefit from it. This one is, we are able to develop Malaysia as a country. We are able to make good friends with other countries. And we are able to go through any challenges that face us. A good example would be COVID lah, because we are due to our due to our stance, we are able to get both Pfizer and Sinovac. Most countries don't take both. They either take Pfizer or they take Sinovac. And it's mostly Pfizer or AstraZeneca or Johnson and Johnson, which we don't have. But yeah, there is not really that many countries that have both Pfizer and Sinovac allowed. But Malaysia is one of those because of their dasar luar. Next will be this is the goals. What is the goals of having these outside relations? And this is why. Why do we have it? Firstly, we have a historical connection. Ikatan sejarah. We have already been friends with we have already had history with Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, Philippines, Thailand, Myanmar, China, India. We are already connected to them for a while. So it's weird to not care about them or not be friends with them if we already had some history together. It's like when you meet your old friend, kan, not old classmate, that's different. But if you meet your old friend and you were already close back then, it will feel awkward if you just stop talking, if you just meet again and then not recognize him, right? Of course, you just have to oh, hi, I haven't met you in forever, and not just ignore him completely. And this I don't know if it's a good example, but yeah. Similarly, so that one is for historical connections, like how Singapore was part of Malaysia. So it will be weird if Singapore and Malaysia just became strangers, right? Of course, they will still have their own things. Same with Indonesia, same with Brunei. But with Arab Saudi, Mesir, Yemen, Turkey, those are more for Islam, because we got Islam mainly from these four countries. Like when the traders came to Malacca and traded with us, that's how most of us became Muslims. Most of them became Muslims, and that's why Islam is the dominant religion. And then remember that we are a British ex-colony, so we joined the Commonwealth. Next is Keperluan Nasional. So Keperluan Nasional, as I said earlier, it is to get the benefits it is to get the most benefits by doing this. It is to benefit our own country. Memberikan keutamaan kepada kepentingan negara means prioritizing the benefit of the country itself. So when we have these dasar luar, we always need to focus the most on what would help us best. Kedudukan yang strategik menjadi perkiraan utama dalam membentuk dasar luar dengan negara serantau. So what I think this means is, since we're so close to China, we need to become friends with China. Or since we're so close to Singapore, we need to put our stance based on Singapore. Based on where we are, it decides what is best for us. And then hubungan baik dengan negara luar membolehkan Malaysia menjaga kebajikan rakyat. And not only that, there's also foreigners, not foreigners. There's Malaysians living in other countries, and we don't want them to be dead because of us. What happened with North Korea? When we broke ties with North Korea, some Malaysians were just stuck there, and it's something like that lah. And then I don't know, I forgot if some people stuck there, but I just know that there was something with North Korea that happened when, if you remember it, a few years ago. Kepentingan ekonomi dan kawanan menyebabkan Malaysia mengamalkan dasar luar yang bebas dan berkecuali. The reason why Malaysia is now neutral is because it is best for the economy. Again, China is rising, and we don't want to be angry with them because we have Chinese people in Malaysia and we have Malaysian people in China. So to make sure that doesn't happen, we stop being allies with British. We are still ex-British colony. We are still connected to British. We still cherish them as our old bosses, but we don't want to be like dependent on them anymore. We want to be more like we are okay with everyone type of thing. So yeah. Next is kepimpinan. Kebijaksanaan dan kebolehan seseorang memimpin negara turut menjadi asas penting. So it depends on the ruler as well, like the leader. What does the leader think about what he should be doing? Like Tun Abdul Razak decided not to support British as an ally anymore and became more neutral. That is Tun Abdul Razak deciding to do things. And back then Tunku Abdul Rahman was the Menteri Luar Negeri, I think. So he was the one who decided who to make friends with and so on. So the leader has to be smart on what stance he should be taking. So you see, dasar menjalinkan hubungan dengan negara sebab membangun merupakan satu perubahan sikap pemimpin yang lebih cenderung kepada negara maju. So back then, the leaders were more biased towards developed countries. But now we are helping more developing countries. Because Malaysia is in the middle. It is almost developed, but it is still developing. So we are trying to help other countries catch up as well. Lastly is persekitaran luar. So perkembangan politik, ekonomi dan sosial antara bangsa yang sentiasa berubah menyebabkan penggubaran asal luar Malaysia disesuaikan dengan perubahan yang berlaku. So again, we that's not my recommendation. We decide on what our stance will be based on the political situation, the economic situation, and how the things are outside of Malaysia. So it says here, during the Cold War, we are more Western biased, because we hate the communists. Like we are anti-communist, so we are more Western biased, and also we are ex-British colony kan, and British is a Western power. So during the Cold War, we were more towards British. However, after China started becoming its own country, after the Soviet Union dissolved, actually no, it hasn't happened yet. But basically, when things started to change, mainly China started to become more scary. We slowly turned into a more neutral type of stance. So yeah, it's all about if you're an old friend of mine, you will be my friend. Since British used to be our owner, we will support you guys. Oh no, China is now scary. We cannot be their enemy. Let's be friends with them instead. But we're gonna be friends with British anyway, so we are friends with both. That means we are neutral. So that's how Malaysia's story goes, in a rough way. Okay, next is Malaysia and PBB. So PBB, or as you know, as United Nations, it was made to protect the peace and stability of the world. Malaysia became a PBB member after independence. So Malaysia joining PBB is proof that Malaysia is a country, and it's also proof that Malaysia supports peace and stability. So how does Malaysia commit to PBB? Firstly, they really go by the rules. Piagam PBB, they really go by the rules, which is always prioritize human rights, and always stand by them, like regardless of race, color, religion, gender, language, we still prioritize human rights. And next is we always respect other countries except for one, and we don't get involved in other countries' problems. Like for example, if Myanmar, currently Myanmar has that military situation, the most that we did was we just went there and hope for the best. Like we just say in simple ways, hope for the best. But we're not like actively going to Myanmar, fighting the military and taking over the country. No, we're not doing that. We let them leave it to themselves until there is a need to do so. So countries like America fighting Iran and Iraq, that is getting involved in other people's stuff. But Malaysia isn't like that. The most we do is we send people there and help them a bit, but we don't actively get involved in like politics there. Next is we are involved in a lot of United Nations agencies. Like the most popular example would be Unesco. Unesco is like a way to it's a way to recognize very historical sites. So we have Gunung Mulu, Taman Kinabalu, Bandar Melaka, Georgetown, and Lembah Lenggong as heritage sites, World Heritage Sites, Tabak Warisan Dunia. We also work together with FAO and WHO, which are based on the UN as well. And the one that they mention a lot is UNHCR. So UNHCR, or United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, basically it is an agency that mainly handles refugees. So Malaysia let United Nations open a UNHCR office here, so that we are able to accommodate people who run away from other countries because the country isn't good enough, because the country has some problems. And also people who don't even have a country, maybe they're just born in the sea. So menyertai Majlis Keselamatan Badan-Badan di PBB, majlis ini bertanggung jawab mengagalkan menyertai Majlis Keselamatan Badan-Badan di PBB, majlis ini bertanggung jawab mengagalkan keamanan dan keselamatan antara bangsa. So they also joined this Majlis Keselamatan, which is mainly for maintaining peace. And they weren't a temporary member. They're not actually actively involved, like completely. They're just there here and there. About UNHCR kan, Malaysia's stance on refugees is weird. So most countries, they just don't want refugees, so they want everyone to go away. Others, they love taking in refugees because because we feel bad for them, we sympathize with them. We want them to have we want them to have a home here instead. Malaysia's stance on refugees is, you can come here until everything there is okay, then you can go back. Or in a more realistic term, you can stay here for a while, but once everything there is almost okay, we don't want you here anymore. Okay, so they contributed in some peace missions, misi pengaman. Mainly they were helping in Congo. I see Bosnia and Herzegovina, and a few others. And the reason why they have these these teams for these peace missions is to make sure that the people there are safe, to make sure that there is no weapons being used, or there is no like bad things happening, and to make sure that the rules there are being followed. Because some people will think they're above the law and they will do some weird stuff. So here are the examples. You have to memorize them. Next is Pegawai Pemerhati or observer. Oh my god, it's so blurry. This is not mine. So Pegawai Pemerhati or observer. So we are like observing conflicts. So for example, we will be observing Bosnia and Herzegovina's issue. And the difference between observing and being part of the peace missions is, peace mission is more like involved in making sure that nothing goes wrong in the country, while observing is more like helping countries develop, as you can say it lah. Membantu pentadbiran dan pengurusan, memberikan latihan teknikal, and menjadi juru bahasa. So observer nations is more like helping them go on with their system. I don't know how to say it best. This one is more towards making the situation better. This one is more towards trying to get things back to normal. I hope that's a way to say it. Okay, next is Tokoh Malaysia. So the first example is Tan Sri Dr. Jimila Mahmud, and she is Dr. Perubatan and a human activist. And the most important thing that she did was she was one of the Setiausaha Agung PBB, and then she was involved in UNFPA, and she was the head secretariat of PBB in 2014. Dr. Maimuna Muhammad Sharif is a public officer, a government officer, and she was the head of UN Habitat and was the first woman to do that in Asia. And UN Habitat is a very active agency. They is considered as the most active agency, and their main focus is trying to make sure that people can live comfortably in cities. Tan Sri Razali Ismail is a diplomat, and he was a delegation, a Malaysian. He was the one who led the Malaysian delegation to UNDP, United Nations Development Program. This was when GPN was done. So this was when Malaysia was still trying to develop. He was the vice president of Majlis Ekonomi dan Sosial PBB, or ECOSOC, and he was also the Setiausaha Agung for Myanmar, the head, the representative for Myanmar. And then Jomo Kwame Sundaram is an academic member, ahli academic. I'm just literally translating. He was penyelaras penyelidikan. I'm not so sure what that means. And then next is he was the penolong Setiausaha Agung for Pembangunan Ekonomi Jabatan PBB Ekonomi dan Sosial. 2012 and 2015 dilantik sebagai penolong ketua pengarah. And then Tan Sri Abu Sama Abu Bakar, he was a soldier. He was the Pemerintah Tertinggi UNOSOM II in Somalia, which was one of the peace missions, I think. He was the first Malaysian to be the chief, the leader in command, the highest leader of PBB's army, and this shows that that the United Nations understand that Malaysia is very dedicated to doing their job as a United Nation, as a part of United Nations. This UN giving Malaysia these very high ranks is a sign that UN knows that Malaysia is serious in being a good member. Next is Malaysia and Commonwealth. So Commonwealth is a body comprised of ex-British territories. And the reason why they joined Commonwealth is because we got a lot of benefits. Because just like the block sterling stuff, there's a few other stuff. So the first reason why we joined Commonwealth is because I don't know. Wait, no. This is penyataan sumbangan. This is one of the things that we did in Commonwealth. We firstly joined Rancangan Colombo. So Rancangan Colombo is trying to reduce poverty rates in Commonwealth countries, including Malaysia back then. And we got some advice based on education, farming, technical, and health. And terlibat dalam program latihan. So we were in a training program back then until 1995, which is when we are more developed. And then after we become more developed, we help the others. We help the other countries in developing. We give them training, we give them advice, and we try to reduce their poverty rate. Next is Kerjasama Pertahanan. So I think this one is AMDA, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I think it's AMDA. I forgot the full name, but it's AMDA. And AMDA was done to make sure that nobody tries to attack Tanah Melayu. So it says here, perjanjian ini membolehkan Britain serta negara Commonwealth memberikan komitmen terhadap pertahanan negara. So Commonwealth countries like Australia, Fiji, I forgot the others, they are able to help Tanah Melayu when it gets attacked. Kerajaan menyediakan kemudahan kepada tentera Britain dan pasukan simpanan strategik Commonwealth, sama ada untuk obligasi Commonwealth maupun keperluan antarabangsa. Next is for economy reasons. So Commonwealth countries are very involved with trading with Malaysia. And when you join the Commonwealth, it is easier to trade. I think it's because of the block sterling, but I'm not so sure. So it's just easier to trade with Commonwealth countries. And when you are a Commonwealth country, a Commonwealth nation, you can pay less tax and you pay them less tax. So Malaysia trades with like Britain, and Britain takes less money from them. Kemudahan turut disediakan. Oh, and also there's also a Commonwealth Fund, and Commonwealth countries can borrow from it, and we also can, and then people from Commonwealth countries can also invest in Malaysian stuff. Next is we also went really against apartheid. So South Africa is a Commonwealth country back then, but Malaysia really hated them because they did apartheid. So apartheid is basically racial discrimination based on color. Black people are second class, white people are first class. So this is very racist, and Malaysia hates it. Like, they really don't like this racial stuff, because Malaysia is a multi-racial country. So of course they will hate people to be judged based on their color. So because Malaysia was so active, it was like during Mahathir. Mahathir was really I won't say noisy, because this is a good thing to be noisy about. It's more active. Mahathir was very active in this apartheid issue. So in the end, South Africa had to pull out from Commonwealth because they couldn't handle all the countries going after them. And then Malaysia gets involved in COGM, or I call it COGM lah, Masyarakat Ketua-Ketua Negara Commonwealth. And this is where countries are able to discuss about current issues. And then the Commonwealth Games, Malaysia was a Commonwealth Games host in 1998. So what are the challenges that they face trying to strengthen their relations with other countries? Firstly, they have some trouble politic-wise, because remember, China was getting stronger. So because of that, Malaysia had to change their stance from pro-Barat to berkecuali, so that and they don't care about ideology anymore. Last time they cared whether you're a communist or not, but now they don't care as long as they don't do bad things to Malaysia. So because of this change from pro-Barat to berkecuali, Malaysia is able to become friends with China. Next is cabaran politik serantau. So what happened was, within Southeast Asia, Vietnam had some issues. They had a flood. So Malaysia was also affected, because a lot of people, not a flood. I read it wrong. It's when a lot of refugees came. A lot of Vietnamese refugees came to other countries during the Cold War, and this included Malaysia. A lot of Vietnamese people came to Malaysia. And then because this was like during Indochina included Vietnam, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. I forgot the exact 3 countries. But basically, Vietnam, Indochina, Indochina consists of like a lot of countries. But in this textbook, it focuses on the countries that were very involved with the communist stuff. Like especially Vietnam, because Vietnam was in the Cold War, kan? So because of this, a lot of people ran away from Vietnam, and they came to a lot of countries, including Malaysia. And then this is about ASEAN, so I'll talk about ASEAN later. But basically, they discuss about what happened in Indochina, and then they discuss like how to handle the issues there. Next is cabaran keselamatan dan pertahanan. So because the AMDA, Anglo-Malaysian Defence Agreement, was signed when Malaysia was just independent. Tanah Melayu actually was just independent. They don't want to depend on British that much anymore, because remember, they want to become more neutral. So instead of having an agreement with British and Commonwealth countries, they instead have a new agreement, which is FPDA, or 5 Power Defensive Agreements, which involve Malaysia, Singapore, Britain, New Zealand, and Australia. So instead of being actively protected by Britain, it's more like Malaysia will get some help with training from Britain and other countries. So yeah, this AMDA was British people, Australian people, other soldiers will come to Malaysia to protect us. But instead, now it's they will train us and we will handle ourselves after that. Malaysia also worked with ASEAN to strengthen their defense. And if you remember correctly, Perjanjian Hat Yai, I think it was This was during the communist issue. This was about the this was Perjanjian Hat Yai, if I remember correctly. So this was about the communist issue. So Malaysia had a few agreements to make sure that their country is safer. And then there's pembangunan economy. So this because there were a lot of like advanced countries, rich countries, and they were the ones like controlling the prices of stuff. So Malaysia was a member of ITC, or Majlis Timur Antarabangsa, and GATT, and they really begged other countries to not control their to not be the one to not manipulate the prices, like because the advanced countries have the most power. What that means is they can do whatever they want. So with the price. So Malaysia begs them not to do whatever they want in the price. Make it controlled. Make sure it doesn't go up and down all the time. Malaysia also created Petronas, and the reason why they wanted to create Petronas was because they wanted to develop their country more, to catch up with those countries. So next is Malaysia and ASEAN. So before ASEAN, there was ASA. So ASA comprised of Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. And then after that, there was also Mafilindo, which is Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. And Mafilindo's function was to... ASA was because they are like close to each other. While Mafilindo was because of the issue with Malaysia being formed. If you remember correctly what happened with Sabah and Sarawak. But Mafilindo didn't really do much. So in the end, because they decided to like become closer with each other, they made ASEAN. So ASEAN first only had Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, and Thailand. But now there is Brunei, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And Timor-Leste is in SEA Games. So yeah. At first there was only 5 countries, but in the end ASEAN accepted more countries to join. And that's why ASEAN is nowadays ASEAN is actually pretty successful. So it's one of the good things about Malaysia's stance on outside matters. So let me see here. ZOP Fund, Declaration Zone of Peace, Declaration Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality, ZOP Fund, is revealed in Kuala Lumpur, and it is something that was discussed by Malaysia and ASEAN. So one of the things that one of the contents of ZOP Fund was Malaysia wants to become friends with China, and Malaysia is using ASEAN as a way to show that that they changed their stance. So if you don't understand what I'm saying right now, I'm gonna say it again. ZOP Fund is Malaysia's way of declaring, of revealing to the world that they don't want to be pro-Barat anymore. They want to be friends with China. So yeah, again, ZOP Fund is ZOP Fund is Malaysia's way of saying that they want to be neutral, and in the end, ZOP Fund succeeded in making Malaysia more well known, Malaysia more accepted, and it was recognized by America, Sharikat, Russia, and China. So like they all noticed that Malaysia is declaring neutrality, and they're like, oh, okay, we're okay with it then, because you don't hate any of us anymore. So next is penyelesaian konflik Suratau. So remember about the Indochina stuff, because of the communist issues. So it affected Malaysia because Malaysia is close to, because they are ASEAN countries, and Malaysia is close to them. So Malaysia mentioned that other countries should not be involved in Vietnam, because remember that America and Russia or Soviet Union were both involved in Vietnam. Malaysia didn't want them to do that, but they did it anyway. And then in Cambodia, it was solved through election, but Malaysia sent some misi pengaman, some peace missions just in case. And then ASEAN countries are Malaysia's best friends when it comes to economy, especially Singapore lah. So at first there was AIP between Indonesia and Malaysia, and then there was phosphate fertilizer between Philippines and Malaysia. No Philippines and Malaysia. Through ASEAN, they were able to help with copper and phosphate fertilizers in the Philippines, and baking soda powder in Thailand. And they were able to help with those. And then so AIP helped with urea fertilizers in Indonesia and Malaysia. So AIP helped with those. AIP also helped with phosphate fertilizers in Philippines and serbuk soda in Thailand. And this proved that ASEAN's countries have a lot of trading potential. They have a lot of they are rich in things that they can trade with. So this caused Malaysia to promote and support the concept of integrating ASEAN's economy, integration of ASEAN's economy. What that means is they want ASEAN to be they want ASEAN to be its own market. What this means is because ASEAN has so much potential, Malaysia wants ASEAN to be its own large market, and they can use their own ASEAN currency to trade in that market. And to increase these trades between ASEAN countries, they had a few incentives, and they also cut. Similarly to Commonwealth, when you trade with ASEAN countries, you get less tax. Lastly, they had some work. They worked with CMO. They had some social cooperation. So they worked with CMO, Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization. So this is how they work together with other countries in terms of social matters like education, exchange programs, they made this REXAM, the Regional Center of Education in Science and Mathematics in Pulau Pinang, and then they also work together in terms of culture, budaya, having cultural festivals and having tabung kebudayaan ASEAN. So social can be many things. It can be your race. It can be your education, as long as it involves humans. And then there's also SEA Games lah. That's the most popular example of kerjasama sosial. Next is NAM. So wait, I'm gonna highlight this one just in case it comes out. Betul ASEAN ialah keamanan, kestabilan, kegigihan, kedaulatan, kesucian dan kemakmuran. Okay. So next is NAM. So NAM, or Negara Tanpa Pihak, I forgot the non-aligned movement, is proof that Malaysia is a neutral country. So basically when they joined NAM, it showed other countries that Malaysia no longer is Western bias. It all started when Muhammad Ghazali Shafi'i was in a meeting in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, for a summit, I think it was. So again, as I mentioned earlier, them joining NAM is proof that Malaysia became a more neutral country. And when Malaysia joined NAM, they became more. They're able to show their voice more. They're able to voice their opinions on more things. They're able to express their point of view on certain things. So the things that they mentioned included apartheid, Palestine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, while having this neutral stance. So Malaysia became the head, what's it called again? The host of the NAM summit in 2003, and Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi was the leader of NAM for 3 years after 2003, and his job was to meningkatkan tahap kemajuan dan pembangunan anggota NAM serta bersama. So as the leader of NAM, him and Malaysia's job is to make sure that the countries of NAM become more advanced, and and work together with them so that they become more respected. Because because Malaysia used to be like a smaller country, but slowly over the years, Malaysia became a larger voice, became more important. Especially when they talked about apartheid and Palestine. In particular, they talked about Palestine in that summit in 2003. Next is they also get involved in like some politics. They are very supportive of human rights, especially apartheid. So Malaysia not only use Commonwealth as a platform to voice their opinion on the apartheid, they also use NAM and PBB, and they pressured South Africa to do stuff. They also brought the issue about Bosnia up during the NAM summit in 1992, and Yugoslavia was a NAM member, and since Yugoslavia was involved in this, they got suspended from this organization. So yeah, and then dasar keamanan dan berkecuali. So again, even though Malaysia is voicing out their opinions a lot, they still don't want to make any enemies. They want the big and not only do they not want like anyone to kacau them, they also don't want anyone to kacau other countries. What I mean is they don't want China, Russia, America, and like the big powers to get involved with other countries' internal matters. Like what happened with Myanmar. Like we don't want to be actively involved in taking over. We don't want something like Vietnam to happen again. So yeah, and then Malaysia signed the Lusaka Agreement in 1970 as a way to show that they hate nuclear weapons, and yeah, this declaration of Lusaka is proof that the NAM countries do not support nuclear weapons. So yeah, not only Malaysia does not want to be biased towards any side, they also don't want any other country to try and get involved in other country matters, like what they did with Vietnam last time. They don't want something like Vietnam to happen again lah. This last one is about OIC. So OIC is Organization of Islamic Countries, and it was first held in Rabat Maghribi, which was when the Zionists started doing their stupid stuff by attacking Masjid Al-Aqsa, and they still do it until today. So so after what happened in Palestine, because it's Palestine, I don't call it by the other name, I call it Palestine. Because of what happened to Palestine, it made the Islamic countries very mad, including Malaysia. Malaysia was extremely mad about this. So they all decided to create their own organization called OIC, which comprised of Muslim majority countries and some other Muslim countries like Russia, some Muslim countries like Russia and Thailand, because those have quite a lot of Muslims, but they aren't the dominant one. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else. Okay, it all started with Tunku Abdul Rahman. He voiced out that there should be an Islamic organization to protect the rights of Islamic people, of Muslims all over the world. It was brought up in a Congress, and in the end, they decided to come up with OIC, and Tunku Abdul Rahman was the first Setiausaha Agung. I'm not sure what it actually means. Yeah, so when Tunku Abdul Rahman became the Setiausaha Agung of OIC, it showed that Malaysia was very involved in this new organization, and they are very active in this organization, basically. So what was Tunku Abdul Rahman's job? His job was to memastikan masyarakat Islam di seluruh dunia mendapat pembelaan yang sewajarnya. In other words, Tunku Abdul Rahman's main job was to make sure that all the Muslims in the world, all the Islamic countries, are able to get the justice they deserve, like Palestine. And then Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi was also the head of OIC in 2003. During this time, the 9/11 attacks happened, so the stigma, the stereotype of Muslims back then were really bad. Muslims were related to terrorism, poverty, and kemunduran is undeveloped. Like they thought Muslims were stuck in the past. They thought we were all poor. They thought we were terrorists. They thought Muslims were like really bad, and this was a very important time for OIC because we needed to like change that image of ours. Malaysia is because the concept of jihad, as we call it, or sacrifice, they claim that that what they did with 9/11 is jihad, sacrifice for God, Allah. But Malaysia is more like a more moderate type of thing, because remember, as a Muslim myself, I've always learned that Islam always prioritizes moderation. Like we don't want to be extreme. So the people who did all of those deserve to go to hell. Malaysia stands on any jihad matter is we should not be going to the extreme ways. We should be moderate. We should be peaceful. We should be nice. And even though Malaysia was against 9/11, they did not agree with 9/11. The racial stigma was still there. Like people still thought that Muslims were terrorists because of what happened. Even though most Muslim countries agree that that is not Islam, there is still that fear. And I guess it's understandable that people have to be safe, but it's just sad that it has to happen that way. So another few things that OIC did included making UIAM for education, and they gave scholarships to people in Muslim countries. And then there's also this and they were also involved in trying to solve all of these issues with Islamic countries like Palestine, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq. I think recently Syria. So so Malaysia was the middleman to solving the Iran-Iraq conflict. Malaysia was also a huge supporter and still is a huge supporter of Palestine, and they really supported the PLO. And then we obviously want Palestine to be its own country, its own independent country. And Malaysia also supported Mujahideen Afghanistan against the Kabul regime. And the Kabul regime was helped by Soviet Union, which we are not really friendly with. So we supported the Mujahideen Afghanistan fighting for their own country's rights lah. I won't get much to what's happening today, but this stance is more like we will see what happens. Lastly, the OIC is a way for them to develop their economy. Through OIC, they were able to have this ISDB, Islamic Development Bank, and through ISDB, they're able to get some benefits with borrowing from these banks to help with their projects. They were able to borrow from ISDB to help with the projects, and then ISDB also helped to create more Islamic banks. Because ISDB is an Islamic banking system. Because Islamic banking is different from like normal banking because we don't want interest. So it helped with creating more of these